specialists that are needed along the way as well. So rather than you having to troll through all of my website, all of my content, what I'm doing today is wrapping up. I've got a list of about 5 or 6 really key tips, my best advice, and I'll see how many I get through. So the first one that I wanted to talk about as my best piece of marketing advice is making sure that your brand positioning is set up correctly. A lot of companies don't have brand positioning at all, especially when you look at places like B2B companies, service companies, lots of brands too, consumer brands. It's more commonly seen in B2B. What I mean by brand positioning is answering the question as a business and as a brand, why should you buy from us, not them? Now, I don't mean that you go out on your social media or your website or your marketing collateral to say, oh, we're really good and they're really rubbish, but actually the mechanics of it should be doing that. A lot of companies talk only about the category they're in and what they actually sell and do. They don't talk directly to the end customer about how they best solve that said person's problem. And that is what brand positioning is all about. If you think about marketing as human to human interaction, the best marketing will always say or embody, you have this problem, right? Here's how we're going to help you with that. And that really is the fundamentals of marketing in relation to what I'm talking about here. So a really good way to look at A, whether you've got brand positioning in place in the first place, and B, whether it's robust enough. You could really just start with a super simple exercise. Have a little look at your company's brand. So just step out of yourself for a second and have a look as if you were a potential customer. Get yourself in their head. Have a look at the presence that your brand has and just really ask yourself, are we clearly stating why we would be the best choice for the problem that they're facing? A lot of times this isn't happening in the absence of good brand positioning. So that's a really good one to start with. If the answer is, yeah, you think you do, it can be worth checking that out with an external consultant, with your customers themselves. It can be a bit of a tricky one to do without the support of a strategic marketer, because ultimately you don't want to be going to your clients and saying, hi, do you think that our branding's good? Because they'll typically just say, oh, I like your logo, or yeah, it looks cool, yeah, it's good, I buy from you. So it would be a bit more of a robust process as to understanding from your customers, well, what are the pain points they face? What are their frustrations with the offerings within your marketplace? What don't they like? What do they like? What do they love about your business? What do they dislike about the competition? And it's a little bit different as a strategic process than gathering customer feedback for improving the company. It's a lot more about finding your strengths as a business and finding the weaknesses of the competition, being aware of their strengths too, so that you can find a unique territory to occupy. So it's just something for you to start thinking about. The second one, in relation to my gold standard advice, is make sure you have a strategy. One thing I always say, and let's talk about marketing plan. One thing I always say is, I'll ask a company, do you have a marketing plan? Yeah, we have a marketing plan. And something I always say is, let me have a look at it, because just because there's a document entitled Marketing Plan 2020/21 doesn't make it so. There might be a document there, but it may well not be up to standard. This can be for a variety of factors. First of all, you could be having someone too junior creating the plan. I see this a lot with marketing assistants who are quite junior and new to their role, are wrongly asked to develop a marketing strategy, and then their bosses or their board become frustrated that the plan is not a marketing plan or a strategy, and that there's gaps in it and holes in it and is too tactical and perhaps too fluffy. This is not the fault of the marketing assistant. This is because they've been tasked with something that is above their level. So a little bit like if you've got someone who works on a production line being asked without any training or experience to come up with the operation strategy for the entire Amazon warehouse. This is how I like to sort of connect those two things. So having a marketing strategy is really important. If you do not have senior in-house marketing, and I mean by that someone who sits on the board, I mean, that's it, someone who sits on the board who is a marketer. If you don't have that in-house, or an extremely experienced marketing strategist who has delivered marketing strategies in the past, you will need external support. There's no other way. A marketing strategy is absolutely fundamental to achieving success within the marketing department. Now, the other thing I come across quite a lot and that I help advise clients on is oftentimes when it comes to starting with the marketing strategy, we look at, okay, what is the business strategy that sits above and how are we going to connect all of the marketing to that? It's not uncommon for the business strategy itself to not be set up quite right. So actually marketing as a function should be helping the business really look at, is our business strategy set up correctly? Do we know what our mission is as a business? What's our constant? What are the objectives financially? What do we need to do to meet the needs of our customers and markets? What do we need to do operationally? What about people and culture? So obviously it's endless lists when it comes to business strategy, but just sense checking, again, potentially with an external business consultant if you're not convinced that your board has all of the experience necessary for having a really robust business strategy. That's really key. So marketing strategy at a top level should be looking at, okay, what do we need to achieve as a company? Who is it that, where is it that growth's going to come from? How have we performed in the past in relation to our marketing? What's working for us? What isn't? Who are we targeting? What do they care about? How do they buy? How are we measuring success? What does good look like? How do we know what good looks like? You know, really working through all these things. Only then get into tactics. So a website should be a later down the line thought. So oftentimes I find companies will say, well, do we need a new website? And I'll say, that is impossible for me to answer. You would need to go up like 10 levels in marketing strategic planning to work out if a website overhaul is needed. Now, what is great about working with marketing consultants is we will never suggest that you need to overhaul anything without a thorough look into the metrics and the wider marketing effectiveness of said channel or activity. Because all we care about is, where do you need to get to and how are we going to get you there in the most effective way? So let's look at what resources you've got. Let's look at what budget you've got. Let's look at your team. Let's look at what you need to achieve. How can we make this work? So it's not always about making you spend more or overhauling everything for the sake or rebranding for the sake. I mean, I love rebranding. It's brilliant when a company wants to and they need to. Fantastic. But not for the sake of it. Okay. Become customer orientated. This is a huge one in marketing. Excuse me. Become customer orientated. So the actual definition of marketing by the Chartered Institute of Marketing is: marketing is about satisfying customer needs profitably. Now, what I take from that is, that's what a business is, isn't it? We set up a business in order to have customers. Now, if those customers are not satisfied, this is not going to be a successful, sustainable business, because we're going to spend most of our time trying to firefight and find ways to grapple around and not lose customers. So satisfying customer needs, okay, great, profitably, that's the bit that really matters, isn't it? So when we look at how can we be profitable as a company whilst also meeting customer needs, we start to realise that marketing strategically is way more than tactics like websites, email, SEO, channels, Facebook, Instagram, CRM. It's about setting up the organisation to be customer orientated, having the customer as a central point. So even things like how we educate our teams in the culture of the business, in the this is how we do things as a company, is always pulling back to that customer. We do things like this because we have promised our customer that we won't let them down. We need to make sure that we respond to complaints in a timely manner because we need to make sure that the metrics of customer satisfaction are upheld. These are completely random examples. But you start to get the gist that having the customer central to everything, and that means the offering of the business, how the operations are set up, how do customers want to be serviced? Are we sending them 30-page reports in line with our service when actually they just want a highlight? Are we doing things that are just sort of based on our assumptions as an organisation rather than what our customers actually want and need? And it's really easy for companies to get completely divorced from their customer without even realising. So as they grow, you start to get new layers of complexity. So someone like myself who works as a consultant and a coach, just for me, it's super easy to be agile. If a client says, Jade, I don't really want this amount of information, could you, absolutely, and I can change it instantly. But what starts to happen is you get this differing mindsets throughout an organisation, and if we're not careful, it just starts to go into offshoots of different areas. And then even if a customer does complain about something, well, it's gone to the complaints department and operations didn't pick it up, and well, no, we've always done it this way, this works really well. But the customer's not saying that, and then marketing's doing their own thing over there, winning leads that are not the right fit for the business, etc., etc. So how to become customer orientated? That's a biggie. I would start with, again, making sure you've got that marketing strategy and making sure that the marketing strategy clearly defines who you are targeting, and that isn't everybody. It's not everybody. It is about identifying who is the ideal client for you, ideal customer, in line with your strengths that can expose the weaknesses of the other options available. So you may well be able to work with lots of different people, but that's not to say that your marketing should be about, we do everything for everyone. Because what is it they say, if you stand for nothing, you fall for everything, something like that. I'm really bad with sayings. If you follow this channel, you will learn I am absolutely terrible with sayings. So please don't laugh at me. Laugh at me if you want, whatever brightens your day. So becoming customer orientated, that's a whole other topic. I will cover that in another video. It's a really big one. Set up the team right. So you could have the best strategy in the whole world. You could have this beautiful strategy. You could have hired someone to write this strategy for you, but without looking at how the team is structured, you can find that it doesn't actually go anywhere, and it just becomes a lovely document that's not used. So the biggest issue I find when there's companies whose marketing isn't as effective as they'd like it to be is when I talk to them about their marketing department, the conversation can sometimes, and I don't mean this to diss people, but the conversation can sometimes be, I really don't feel like the individuals in my marketing team are motivated or achieving in their roles. And when I look at the job descriptions that tend to be quite different from what they're actually doing day to day, and I look at the skill sets and qualifications of each individual marketer, I quickly can see that what they are good at and what their level is very disjointed from what is expected of them. And this is really common for marketers, and I'm a massive advocate for marketers. I adore them, and I always have their back. So, if you've got let's give an example. You've got a marketing executive that just, if I see a job description that says you will be responsible for managing the marketing program, developing the marketing plan, copywriting, SEO, social media posting, graphic design, managing the content calendar, video creation, what else is there? Keeping the website up to date, driving the CRM strategy, managing the data, making sure that the sales collateral is developed for the sales team. Now, don't get me wrong, if they are program managing all of that stuff, that's absolutely wonderful. That's the type of role that a marketing executive would adore. But if they're in charge of doing all of that, they will not be successful. They just won't. This is not someone who exists, there is not someone who does all that stuff without either being the most exceptionally talented marketing executive I would ever have met. Even if they were, they would not have the time to do all of those things effectively. They will be running pillar to post, and people outside of that department will not realise just how much is on their plate, and they'll start to be seen as a failure. I asked them 3 months ago for this corporate brochure. They haven't come back to me. I need this for my clients. Why haven't they updated the website in 2 weeks? Why haven't they done this? This is not on. The marketing plan's not fit for purpose. That blog's not in line with our customer personas. These are the sorts of things that you'll start to think about your marketing team because there's too much pressure. So there's a couple of things you can do. If you can afford to have a nicely set up in-house team, this is an illustration of a structure that could work for, let's say, a business that has 500 employees and turns over, I don't know, let's say they've got 100 employees and they turn over like £20 million. This is completely made up, by the way, do not quote me on this. So maybe you've got your marketing director is on the board, like I said earlier. You've got a marketing manager reporting into the marketing director. The director sets the strategy to the manager, and the marketing manager is responsible for turning that into an action plan. And then maybe they've got a digital marketing executive, a marketing executive, and they've got, let's say, a designer and a PR and comms person. So how that would look is the marketing director sets the overall strategy with the board. The marketing manager takes that plan, turns it into an action plan, comes up with the tactics with the director, briefs the team. The digital marketing manager is responsible for managing the external agencies, because they won't be doing everything. They still won't be doing everything, because digital marketing is a huge role. So they will be orchestrating, managing, reporting with external agencies in line with the set brief by the marketing manager. The marketing executive will likely be doing things like making sure leads are followed up on, plugging them into the system, creating sales collateral with external designers, with external copywriters. So again, not doing those things themselves because they are very specialist skills. They will likely be working with the marketing manager on things like developing the personas and doing brand projects, looking at anything to do with what the marketing plan entails. They will be working for a marketing manager who's been there, done that, can train them, can guide them. And then you've got the designer who, okay, do you know what? A full-time designer can be great when you've got like loads of graphics that need to be put out, sales collateral. But what I would say is I would always use an external, highly experienced brand creative agency for those bigger pieces. So if you need to launch like a really incredible ebook or like an exceptional a video that's really brand level, you don't want to be dragging your designer pillar to post as well. And then your PR and comms person would be responsible for liaising with the media, finding opportunities, looking at reputation management, crisis management, integrating with PR agencies. So this is just an example of a structure. And then each person has areas of accountability. So they report back to the marketing manager, the clearly defined areas that key performance indicators. And these key performance indicators are not woolly, they are directly linked back to, I suppose you could call it a business scorecard. For the growth that we need, how many opportunities do we need and where are they coming from? And then each department, each section of the marketing would be coming up with, well, here's some key performance indicators, so we're starting to know, are things working, but here's the actual concrete results as a result of the marketing efforts. And then the marketing manager reports into the director, and so on and so forth. And this brings me to my last but one point. If I've got time, I'll include the last one as a goodie giveaway. The last but one, budget. I see this a lot. We're just not getting where we need to go. Now, a lot of my work is about asking companies and working with them to define what good looks like and where they need to get to as a company. And I will often say to them, look, if you want to get from where you are now to where you want to be there, 3-5 year target, you will need to invest in it. It's not, there's no magic wand. If you want to get to up there, your budget will need to go like that. If you want to get to there, you could increase your budget to here. If you want to stay where you are, you can keep your budget as it is. There's only so much that being clever with the marketing budget is going to deliver. There's only so far you can take it. Now, oftentimes there's a marketing budget that's being used incorrectly or could be optimized a lot better, and you could start to see a little spike of, actually, now that we've reallocated and really tightened all our marketing, we're seeing really good results. But part of my job as a consultant and coach is to help companies really be honest and practical about, here's the team structure you would need and here's the budget that you would need. Now, what I was going to mention earlier was, if you're not in a position to hire in all of the marketing effort that you need, there are some really good partners, one of which I work extremely closely with, who can be an entirely outsourced marketing department for you. So you would only deal with a marketing strategist, aka me, and then you would have access to whichever whichever skill was needed at any one time to deliver on that strategy. So you'd essentially be fully outsourcing, but not in the way that is mainstream within this sector, where you deal with an agency who just doesn't understand your sector, doesn't get it, loads of mistakes. I've hunted for 15 years to find my partner, and to me, they are the absolute bee's knees. So tapping into an external resource, so maybe you'd have like a marketing executive and a digital marketing executive, or a marketing manager and someone on the board, but you haven't got enough to have loads of people. So you'd still need someone in-house to orchestrate your plan and get all of the insights needed for the external marketing department. But what that would mean is, for say a monthly retainer, you would have access to all these incredibly talented individuals who would be turned on and off whenever needed. Enough about that. So setting the budget. Now, there's a few formulas that you can use. I'll give you an example of one formula. So assuming that a company has, and there's many ways of doing this, okay? So this is an example. Please do not put this into practice, entirely void of any further advice from myself or anybody else. So an example, let's say there's a B2B company who has a healthy profit margin of like 20% or something like that, and they've got it doesn't really matter the size of the company. What we would look at is somewhere between 5 and 12% of sales would be the marketing budget. And then what we look at to know whether it would be down towards the 5%, which honestly is very low, more like 8 to 12% is what I would be suggesting. Now, that all depends on the profit margin, because I understand that some businesses, a lot of the turnover, depending on the industry, is not like pure turnover. It can be sort of money in, money out. So we have to be really careful to understand what we mean by 10% or 8% or 12% of sales. So let's say you've got, I am good at maths, okay? But let me get my head in gear now. So let's say it's 8% of a 5 million turnover company. I can't work that out, but that would be a fairly decent sized budget to just start with, in terms of thinking of a ballpark of where you're getting to. So how we would decide whether it was more towards the 5% or more up towards the 12% would be competitiveness of market. So are your competitors extremely active? And the other one is, how ambitious is your growth plan? So if you're sat there going, I want to go from £2 million turnover to £10 million turnover within 2 years, you would need a more aggressive approach to your marketing. There's no magic wand. You don't just go up there. I mean, I'm sure some people do, but if you're saying that you want to grow through effective marketing, you would need to increase your spend and have a higher. And if you were equally in a very busy marketplace, a very savvy marketplace, that might need to be higher again. Contrasted with, if you're quite happy with how things are and you're happy with organic growth and really getting close to those customers, it might be that you can do some clever things with a little bit of budget and a little bit of external support. And actually, if your competitors are not that savvy, brilliant. I'm always happy when I can get a client from A to B with not a huge amount of expenditure. That's great news to me, because ultimately I want to help them be as profitable as they can be. And if we can keep that monthly marketing spend as low as possible, great. But obviously as possible is the key word there. Use the best. This is so important. You could have the best strategy in the world, you could have the right budget, but if you work with shoddy partners, it's not actually going to work, because if you've got this beautiful brand positioning ready to go, if you've got this incredible insight, if you've got this great strategy, and then you use a really poor copywriter or a web developer who doesn't understand the bigger importance of marketing as a whole, or if you pick a shoddy CRM, or if you're not managing your data properly, or if you're lumping everything onto one marketing assistant, it's just a shame. So another benefit to dealing with marketing consultants and coaches like myself or anyone else you find or are already working with is make sure you look for the best. Who is it that's knowledgeable, who can say to you, this is the CRM for you? No, don't waste your time with that particular activity or tactic. Use this one. This is going to be much better for you. And the same goes for developing the roles for your marketing department. You know, are you just coming up with a marketing role just with some random recruiter maybe who does understand marketing but not necessarily your strategy? Maybe you do, like, it's obviously always good to soundboard with a recruiter, but you know, again, having a marketing resource, if you don't have them in-house, to just really look at, well, this is the strategy, these are the roles we need, and these are what we're looking for in the candidate, and really scour for those marketers. So that's my gold standard advice. I hope that has been useful to you. I would love for you to share your biggest marketing challenges in the comments section, just so that I can find out more about you. I mean, if there's any questions at all that come up, I love talking about marketing. I live and breathe it. You won't stop me. So just go ahead and leave a comment for me. I'd love for you to subscribe to my YouTube, Tambini Marketing, and thank you for listening. Have a great day.